Hey everyone, so I wanted to talk about psychedelics and psychic abilities and how these can benefit and also be unhelpful in different situations and different levels of development. So, I just want to start by saying that I've experienced benefits myself. I started out on, you know, shamanism and reading Carlos Castaneda and things of that nature. So I was deeply into psychedelics and things of that nature. Um, so I've definitely experienced benefits. I think on some level, they open you up to things and they can show you things that you've never known you could do. For example, I had an experience where everything I did, it was just like I knew exactly what to do at the exact moment. And it was like I knew when somebody was going to walk in or walk by, and I knew like how to conduct myself and where to be. And it was like the timing was insane. Like I would be doing something where I knew I'd be getting in trouble if I got caught, and then I would be like, okay, I need to sit down, and I would walk over somewhere and sit down, and the instant that I sit down, someone would come through, um, and it's just like you go through these moments where it's almost like there's something bigger than you that knows everything that's kind of guiding you, and so that can be very awesome, and that can open you up to having these abilities turned on for you. But then there's the other side of it, which is that you're allowing something else to do it for you. And so, just like everything, you develop habits in life and you make agreements with different things, different behaviors, different actions that you take. And so sometimes you can make agreements on a subconscious level, on a spiritual level that you're not even conscious that you're doing with energies, entities, gods, goddesses, etc. And these can kind of take over your sovereignty or your ownership of your own auric field. And so in some areas in South America, like around Peru and areas like that, I know people sometimes take ayahuasca and things like that. And I've heard of tribes where they have competitions where they see how many beings they can get to come into their body. And like the person who can get the most beings to come into their body while taking the ayahuasca, and they can all kind of see it happening together because they're all taking the same dose at the same time. It's like that's the competition, and I've heard good things about that, but what you don't hear very often is the bad side of it. And there are shamans who have come out and said that the beings that they were working with were actually killing the people that they were working with, and that it was not a positive experience. And they even went to their shaman teacher, and their teacher told them, well, the only thing that you can do about this is get stronger beings to work with. And then they do that, and it's just worse, and it just gets worse and worse. And so there is that negative side to it as well. So this is not me saying that I support it or I'm against it. This is me like giving the full outlook. So I don't want to open myself up to who knows what. I prefer to control what I'm doing rather than kind of give the keys to the car away, because these are external energies, and in some sense you are seeking externally, when you take a substance that's not your energy. You're benefiting from a foreign energy coming into you and affecting you. Now, on some level, it can open you up to see yourself more, and I'm not denying that because that is true. And it can open up doorways that you didn't know you had that were dormant. So I would say psychedelics are a great catalyst to allowing yourself into spirituality. It can influence you when you have a foreign energy affecting you and influencing you. I haven't smoked pot in like 5 years or something like that because I've noticed this. It really just kind of brings in a lot of energy that isn't helpful, because it's like, again, you're seeking something outside of yourself to kind of fill in the gap of your own energy instead of filling in with your own energy. And it's a way of getting rid of, like, basically there's energy in your aura, and it could be someone else's energy that you talked to. It could be your coworkers, your family members, your friends, people that despise you, or people that like you. And either way, this energy affects you in the same way that an empath feels the energy around them and kind of absorbs other people's pain or positive energy as well. People don't always talk about that aspect, but it's everything. And so when you're trying to get rid of that, sometimes you may be like, oh, I can't stand this person's energy that's in my field, or you just feel off for some reason after a long shift at work or whatever it is. And that's because there's energy that's not you. It's not your authentic self. It's not your authenticity that's kind of crept in, and you're trying to get rid of it. And that's why people like to go to the bar or smoke weed or whatever, because it does help. It does kick out that energy and replace it with something else. But the thing is that you're replacing it with something else, and it's still not you. You don't have ownership over it. So this can be an improvement, and it can be fun, and it can be an enjoyable experience, but at the same time, you're not the one behind the wheel, so to speak, in these situations. You get carried away. You may act slightly different. You may even start to identify as being that until you quit doing it daily for years and years, and then you look back and you're like, oh, that wasn't quite me, was it? So again, this really goes back to entities and things of that nature. So when I first got into spirituality, actually this is when I was a teenager, and I took mushrooms, and the mushrooms actually saved me from that, if you want to use the word saved, because the mushrooms woke me up to realize that that's not really my truth. And it wasn't so much like I was condemned or judged or anything like that. It was kind of the opposite. It was more so, it wasn't like I was being punished or anything like that, but it was more so just showing me that other people don't connect on that level usually, and that doing that sort of thing or being into that sort of thing is really just was a reflection of my own personal limitations in life, and that by taking that on as kind of like a personality, I guess you could say, or an outlook or a filter on reality, it was really just it was making it see through for me. That's what the mushrooms were doing. So I could kind of see how ridiculous I looked, basically. And basically, it was more out of embarrassment that it was an awakening for me rather than like punishment or like you did bad or like you're a bad person. It wasn't like that at all. It was more like like you're just being silly here. Basically, was the message, like stop being silly, you know. And so that's basically the message that I got. And so that was very helpful. So that was a savings grace for me. And after that, I completely shifted gears and, was no longer into the, so that changed a lot for me. So, mushrooms are great on that level. But the thing is, even when I tune into the energy of psychedelics, there's something about them that's a little possessive, and their energy wants to dominate yours. And on some level, spiritually, you get in the pattern or the habit of allowing yourself to give up. And so a lot of people in psychedelic experiences say, well, you're having a bad trip because you're trying to hold on and you're not giving up. And there is truth to that. And there is a lesson to be learned in that, letting go of things can be very beneficial. But there's a flip side to that. And this is where the energy beings, take advantage of you because they're forcing you to give up, because you're cracked open energetically and they're able to dominate you. And sure, they may have some wise counsel and they may help you and they may help you see things more clearly, but they're also wanting to be in charge. And just like a parent walks a child across the street and holds their hand, these psychedelic experiences make you feel like a child. And I think everybody can relate to that. And there's a reason for that. There's a benefit for that, because when you start something new, you start out as a child. When you look back on yourself, you were a little baby when you first started doing this or that or whatever. Lately, on some level, they may give you a sense of, like being superior, which is another thing that they can do. But ultimately, it's more about keeping you from having your seniority of your own energy field, because it's your energy field. But a lot of the times, the psychedelics kind of make you feel that you have to give that up to other beings. So this is where it can be problematic for people. A lot of people can just go crazy from taking too many psychedelics. That can happen. The other thing is people just get in this rut, and this is probably the biggest, most common problem. I mean, going crazy is a problem, but I don't think that happens too often. But like what really happens the most often, that is the biggest problem, I would say, is that people they just get stuck in a rut. And it's like they're trying to grow, they're trying to expand their consciousness, and they take higher doses and more often, et cetera, trying to, become more psychic or intuitive or whatever, but it just doesn't really happen for them. And so this is kind of like a trap where, you're being led across the street, a parent is grabbing you by the hand and walking you across the street, taking care of you, but at some point the next step is for you to do it by yourself. So in other words, without the guidance of the psychedelics. And so that's where you kind of just, you have to grow up and be like, okay, well, that's cool that you showed me that trick, but like, I'm going to drive the car now. or I'm going to walk across the street your without your guidance, and I'm going to be able to control myself and choose where I go and have your seniority back and have your sovereignty back as a spiritual being. And so this is why, I mean, it's pretty obvious when you just look at people who, drink all the time, alcoholics, or people who use any sort of substance all the time. It's like they need it, they're dependent on it, and they're, kind of like a child that isn't able to manage themselves in the world properly without this, and it's very limiting. And it limits your perception as well. Even though it may expand it in certain ways, it also expands it in a very specific way where you are not in control of what's happening. So once you learn what's out there and you get shown around by your tour guide, there's a point where you may need to stop or go explore the city for yourself on your own terms. So basically what I'm saying here is psychics, if you look around at psychics, sure, there are some people who say they're psychic that smoke tons of weed, but most people out there who do psychic work usually don't do psychedelics or drugs, and if they do, it's very rare. So what's interesting to me about all of this is that a lot of psychics drink alcohol, but they don't smoke weed. And I think there's a reason for this, and this is myself included, which I actually stopped smoking weed before this happened, but after I stopped smoking weed, I started taking classes on developing psychic abilities and doing professional readings and things like that. And in order for me to sign up for the classes, I had to sign a contract that I wouldn't take any psychedelics or smoke weed. So there's that to also throw in there. But my point is that most people who do psychic work do not smoke weed because of everything that I said, because psychedelics control you like that. And they have somewhat of a lingering effect because energetically these things get into your space and you are in such a vulnerable state that you make energetic agreements or spiritual agreements, potentially spiritual contracts, if you want to call it that. But I think it's more so just on a subtle level. I would call it more so energetic agreements where you kind of just agree to be a certain way. And this can be a lot of the times out of needing assistance. And again, you're giving your sovereignty away, you're giving your control over your own space away, your energy field. And so most psychics want to be completely in control of their own energy, and so smoking pot really messes with that, and it makes it to the point where being an empath becomes very difficult because you can't control anything and you're just at the mercy of your environment. So this is what's interesting to me, is that alcohol, I don't think drinking alcohol is good for psychic abilities whatsoever. However, I have noticed that there's a lot more psychics who drink alcohol. And this is because it doesn't open you up in the same way that psychedelics do. So it doesn't have the benefits that psychedelics do to kind of like teach you something new outside of your realm of experience or perception, or to teach you something that you wouldn't have even thought of before. That's what psychedelics are good for. But alcohol doesn't have the psychic side effect, I guess you could say, of allowing yourself to be kind of used by the spirit realm. And people always think of the spirit realm as being what you want to achieve. Yeah, but not necessarily. You know, entities and spirits are just as opinionated as people are and have their own agendas just like people. So, like, opening yourself up to everyone, all the people in the world, you know, it sounds nice, but like you're gonna get taken advantage of. So alcohol, it doesn't really stay in your system as long. It doesn't open you up in the same way. It's like once you are drunk and then once it leaves your system, you have a hangover and your body feels like crap, and that makes it so that your spirit can't really be in your body. You can't really connect with your spirit as well. So alcohol is not good in that sense. On some level, you could say even just being healthy in general. And I'm not talking about like strict healthy where you're like punishing your body to feel healthy, but like where you really just like feel good, not out of, you know, a strict diet where you're, you know, torturing yourself, but where it just makes you feel good. That sort of healthy is what I'm talking about. And that sort of healthy allows your higher self, your spirit, to connect more with your body and to be more in present time with your consciousness. Because your consciousness, well, there's different forms of consciousness, but when you're in your body, your consciousness is what I call the body consciousness. And when you're out of your body, that's more of like the astral consciousness, which can kind of have different memories and different perceptions of reality. But when you're in your body consciousness, in other words, when you're alive on planet Earth or whatever planet you may be on, your body health affects your connection to your higher self and your own spirit. I would like to say a lot of people, they just want to connect to spirit, whatever spirit is. So spirit can mean God, it can mean the universe or whatever you want to call it, but it can also just mean any spirit. And that's where things can be dangerous, because a lot of psychic mediums sometimes go crazy after a while and start thinking that they're God, and like not that they're connected with God and everyone is God, but that they are literally the only one God. And so this is something that happens to people sometimes when they connect too much with these spirits, because they want to please you and tell you what you want to hear and make you feel special in a way to control you so that you listen more and more to them. And even if they're telling you the truth, and even if they're helping you out, they have their own agenda, just like anyone who, you know, you may have a friend and maybe you want your friend to be a certain way, or you just have an opinion about something and you want to make them be like that. And, you know, that's the difference between a child and an adult friend, is you wouldn't treat your adult friend the way that you may treat your child. And so you probably don't want to be treated like a child either. But a lot of spirits, and this goes beyond like psychedelics and everything, this is just even just mediumship and connecting with spirits and channeling as well. You know, you have to use your discretion. You can't just trust a voice because you hear it in your head. Maybe it has information that's valuable, but you also want to understand that that's coming from somewhere that probably has an opinion and an agenda. Even if it's a harmless agenda, it's still an agenda that isn't coming from you and your truth. And so, for me, being psychic and my path that I've chosen for myself is about separating from these external energies and getting them out of my space rather than finding really powerful energies and pulling them in. My method is to push everything out and fill in with myself, my own spiritual energy, rather than anything else. Even if it's a force that's more powerful than me, the point of, being in a body is kind of like driving a car. And, it may be fun to be, sitting in the passenger side while a professional sports driver drives your car. But like the point of, having the car, usually, I mean, it depends how you look at it, but like if you're trying to, own your own car, it seems like you would want to be able to drive it unless you're trying to pay someone to drive you. But let's say that you have a reason to have a car, which is to learn from, to learn how to drive better, because in some sense that's what you're doing here on Earth. You're trying to, you're learning to live better. So it's not just about taking the easy route. And some people do choose the easy route where they just sit in the back of the limo and get driven around while they drink martinis all day long. But like they're not really spiritually developing themselves as much as someone who's really, overcoming challenges, I guess you could say. That's part of the reason why we're here on Earth. Earth is a particularly challenging vibration to be in on purpose. And so that's all by your design. Not just by God's design, but by your spirit's design. You chose this, you wanted this. You wanted to overcome these challenges. And so again, that comes back to another aspect of what I'm getting to with psychedelics, which is they kind of take you out of your body, and so does alcohol, and so do pretty much all drugs. And so it's a little bit of getting away from the reason why you incarnated into your body, which is to experience the hardships of life. So the benefit of it is that you're able to see it from a different perspective. And so you may be trapped in pain, you may have experiences in your life or even perspectives or beliefs that you're trapped in. And you need to kind of separate out from that and see it from outside of yourself, so to speak. So you can, take psychedelics or whatever and really see it from a different perspective and be like, oh, wow, I didn't realize I was being like that. Or be like, oh, wow, this is where that's leading me. Or I just look ridiculous doing this or whatever. Or you may realize that that's not your authentic self and you'd rather connect more with your authentic self. And so that is something that psychedelics can show you. But at a certain point, you need to come back into your body and be more present in your body and really own the energy within your space to completely grow. So that's all I have to say today. If I might think of something else after this, but I think that's everything I have to say. So thank you for watching and have a great day. This video has been edited for public viewing on YouTube because of some sensitive information, particularly about myself. So if you would like to watch the full video, you can do that on my Patreon page, which I will post below this video. Thank you for watching and have a great day.